Disgusting, filthy, vile. There is no room here for abstraction, for hedging, for the careful dance of evocation that so often follows tragedy. Oh, what about this? What about that? A person entered a school in Tumbler Bridge, British Columbia, and took the lives of children. An educator, I believe they took the lives of their own mother, her own stepbrother. This is not a complex sentence. It is not a matter of perspective or political framing. It is a factual statement about an act of such concentrated cruelty that the mind recoils from the weight of what's going on. The person who did this made a choice again and again, with every round chambered, every door opened, every life ended. That choice belongs to them. It is wielded to them permanently, indefensibly, unforgettably. There is no poetry to this, no tragic antihero, no systemic grievance, no systematic grievance that transforms slaughter into commentary. This is rot. It's cowardice, and it's nasty. It is the total collapse of any claim to humanity, and it deserves language that refuses to soften or sanctify. It is vile, evil, demonic, nasty things that are going on right now with this specific person. This specific person. Please listen to my words when I say this, because turns out the shooter was trans. And I already know the political commentators are going to latch on to that fact again and again and again. They're going to latch on to that. Now, this is very important, and I mean no disrespect to anybody in the trans community when I say this, so I want you to really listen to my words when I say this. This is a safe space for trans people, and it always will be. But if we want to get this down to the brass tacks, the shooter, much like majority of shooters in America, and this has happened in Canada, so it's not technically in America, the shooter was biologically a male. Majority of shooters are biologically white men. Let's jot that down. That's just what majority of shooters are. We know this. We have the numbers. We have the statistics. Majority of shooters aren't trans. Majority of shooters are white men, usually going through some wild, nasty things inside of their mind. And this person, this trans woman, being trans does not mean they're more prone to shooting. Let's also get that out the way. Person who did this was trans. That fact is true. It is also, in every meaningful sense, irrelevant to the moral status of the millions of trans people living in the world today who had nothing to do with this act and would never conceive of it. A single atrocity does not radiate outward to stain an entire population. Did you know that? Did you know that? I don't speak for every black person. I don't speak for every man. I don't speak for every biological male. I don't speak for every guy that is 5'6" or 5'5". I'm one of those two. I think I'm 5'5". I'm going to say 5'5". I don't speak for all of them. Violence does not travel through identity like contagion. It stays with the one who committed it, locked in their name, their history, there alone. Now, I know what you're going to say. Well, what about all the white shooters? 100%. It does lock with them. It does lock with every single white shooter that does it. But if we're going to bring up numbers and bring up things and bring up stuff of that variety, we also have to notice a pattern. Notice a pattern. If 95% of school shootings are done by predominantly white males, right? We could say that. If 95% are done by white males, and let's say, 1% are done by trans shooters. Now, what does that mean? What does that mean? Do we harp on this minority within a minority? Do we continually do this over and over again every time this happens? Do we let this distract us from the Epstein files like they're going to try to do? They're going to use this to try to distract us from the Epstein files. That was going to happen when the fact that it didn't happen on American soil, and they're going to use this as a political talking point to actively attack the woke mob and do horrifying things for trans people in the future. Is that what's going to happen? Are we going to use this to distract from the Epstein files? Why are we talking about the Epstein files when in Canada, a trans person, let's not do that. Let's not do that. Let's still talk about the Epstein files. Two tragedies can exist at once. Can we do that? Do we do that? Because every time this happens, you weaponize generalization. This is bigotry. Every time you weaponize generalization. Well, let's talk about the black people did. I'm not black people. I'm a black person. I'm one single black person. I don't represent every single black person, but I am one black person. Same way. Individuals represent only individualistic metrics. That's what happens. That's the reality of it. If 80% of school shootings were done by trans people, this would be a different tone. But it's less than 1%. Less than 1% of school shootings were done by trans people. I think there have been 3 out of, I don't know, hundreds Hundreds at this point, right? And I don't want to undermine the tragedy of the situation. I really don't. But you're going to go to another commentator channel and he's going to talk about the tragedy in greater detail than I possibly can. I really want to get on the fact of the matter that I keep seeing this same talking point, because trans people are not avatars. That's right. They're not these blue people. They're not the blue people. They're not debate prompts awaiting activation. They're not symbols standing at attention for the next culture war skirmish. They are people with full, dense, untelevised interior lives. They have favorite foods and tedious commutes. They have inside jokes with friends and grudges against coworkers. They have parents who worry about them in futures they are trying to build. They have boring Tuesdays. They have Tuesday evenings. They have Wednesday mornings. They have the same ordinary, stubborn persistence of existence that defines any human trying to live. To reduce millions of such lives to a footnote of a killer's biography is a second form of violence committed with language instead of ammunition. It is disgusting, but aimed at the same target: innocence. You are still targeting innocent people. And if you continually do this every single time, it makes sense that it was a trans person. How does it make sense that it was a trans person? How does it make sense? How does that make sense in any capacity? It makes sense to me only in the fact that the person has white skin. That is the only part that makes sense to me. That is the only aspect of this that makes sense to me. I would never assume a trans person would do this. That would not be my natural assumption in any capacity. But I would assume a white person would do it. 100%. I would assume that, like, not. If you had to give me a guess, if you're gambling, if I'm a gambling man, I'm gonna bet on white. Put it all on white. Put it all on white. Oh, I hit it. I hit it again. Yet we know what comes next. It arrives with the grim predictability of seasonal rot. Bad actors, already armed with talking points and pre-written press releases, will seize this tragedy and drag it through the mud of their own agenda. They will wave the bodies like flags. They will use the dead to justify politics designed to exclude, to erase, to punish people who share nothing with the killer but a category. They will say, "This is why," and point at communities that had no hand in the act, no warning of it, no connection to it beyond the crude geography of identity. It is parasitic, opportunistic nonsense, feeding on grief to fuel cruelty. It is morally bankrupt in the most literal sense. It trades in the currency of human suffering and returns nothing but interest on hate. It is nasty and vile, and I'm so ridiculously sick of seeing it. In light of the horrifying tragedy that has happened, and God rest their souls with the families and the tragedies of the people, and I can only offer my condolences, which may mean nothing coming from me, and I apologize, they mean nothing to all the families that lost their children. I cannot even fathom the amount of pain that you are going through, so my condolences are merely flutters in the wind. But no, my heart is with you, and know that I, in all capacities, wish for the best for you guys, and hopefully you get the justice that is rightfully deserved, and hopefully you can continue to live full lives, and hopefully this doesn't weigh on you for the rest of your lives, and hopefully you can find some peace and solace with the fact that that monster will be put behind bars, or maybe something worse will happen to that monster. I pray and hope that something happens, but I do want to say this as well in light of that. Trans people are safe here on my channel. Trans people are welcome here. Trans people are not responsible for the acts of a stranger who happen to share a facet of identity any more than any person is responsible for the acts of a stranger who shares their hair color, their height, their birthplace. Condemnation of violence in solidarity with the targeted stand in the same sentence without contradiction. Moral clarity requires the precision to be both absolute, unforgiving disgust for the killer, and absolute, unwavering defense for the innocent community now being scapegoated for her crimes. These are not opposing impulses. And I want you to notice something. Notice how I'm not misgendering the killer. Have you been aware of that the entire video? The only thing I've said that was in slight ways of misgendering was me stating that they are biological male. If you want to get me on saying they instead of she, go crazy. Have fun. Have fun policing my language in every capacity. But I do want to point this out. You're fighting a worthless battle. You really are. Just know from the bottom of my heart that I am disgusted and absolutely vile. Just disgusted by this absolutely vile, this absolutely nasty, filthy act that happened. It sickens me to my absolute core. I didn't know where Tumbler Ridge, British Columbia was. When I heard British Columbia, I thought, oh, I didn't know they had Columbus in Britain. I didn't know that. It's a town of, I believe, 2,400 people nestled in the foothills of the Rockies, where everyone knows everyone and nobody locks their doors. Pretty nice place. A place where the mayor said he would know every victim by name because he has called them family for 19 years. A community that has weathered recessions and wildfires, that has built itself on mining and grit and mutual care, now forced to bury its 12-year-olds. This geography matters. It matters. It matters. It matters because this is a tragedy for them. It anchors the tragedy in a specific reality. This was not a Nashville school. This was not an American debate. This was a Canadian town under Canadian law with Canadian gun policies that were supposed to make this impossible, and the impossibility happened anyway. That fact carries weight. It does not make the atrocity Canadian in some existentialized, trans-excluding sense. It simply means the grief belongs here to those families, to that town, to that country, now searching for its own reflection. This is a Canadian tragedy. And I'm talking about it simply because it's trans adjacent. That's why I'm talking about it. Because Americans have taken this tragedy and are going to use this to villainize trans people. That's what's going to happen. That's what's happening. It's disgusting. I don't like that. Everything else remains unchanged. The act was monstrous. The victims were innocent. 3 12-year-old girls, a 12-year-old boy, a 13-year-old boy, a 39-year-old teacher who showed up to work, a mother, an 11-year-old child who never made it to school that day. The killer owns her guilt exclusively and eternally. Trans people remain human, remain vulnerable, remain deserving of safety and dignity and the quiet freedom to exist without perpetually defending their right to exist. And anyone who uses this horror to justify further horror tells you with perfect clarity exactly who they are. And I want you to listen to those people and believe them. Believe them when they tell you who they are. You're safe here if you are trans. Have a lovely day. And I hope the onslaught of criticisms that will come because of this school shooting do not ruin your mental health. Please be safe. Have a lovely day or night wherever you're at. I'm out. Peace. Bye.
I'm your Nick and night, be my Laurel, low. Ooh, happy to try what you need. Your world, I love to live in it. Ooh, I love the ride when you